Having said that, assuming that we need to amend the Constitution, ang question ko is on the mode of amending or revising the Constitution. There are three modes. But of course, the third one, we'll not discuss anymore kasi people's initiative, impracticable kasi wala naman talagang legislation in that regard. So we'll just choose between the two. And my first question is, between the two, what are the advantages of one over the other? In terms of, alisin ko na yung cost, Chief Justice Puno, sabi niyo masyadong cheap. So in terms of practicality, in terms of comprehensiveness, and most importantly, what good would it bring to the Filipino people? So I'd like to hear from our resource persons, not limited to those who have spoken earlier, but I'd like to address that question to any of our resource persons. Ano po ba yung mga advantages of one over the other? Meaning, CONAS over CONCON or CONCON over CONAS. Maraming salamat po. I'd like to address that first to my good old friend Sal Panelo.
Sa totoo lang po, kahit na anong paraan, whether CONAS or CONCON, ang taong bayan pa rin ang magdidesisyon. So it doesn't matter really. I remember the President during one cabinet meeting saying that, kasi initially kung matatandaan niyo po si Presidente, gusto niya CONCON. Pero nung sinabi sa kanya, gagastos ka dyan baka hanggang 14 billion. So sabi niya, hindi, gastusin ko na lang yung para sa taong bayan. Anyway, nandiyan naman kayo. Tapos, hindi ko makalimutan yung sinabi niya. Maraming ko kontra. Kasi sabihin, vested interest kayo. Pero, ang pakikiusap ko lang sa inyo, yung gagawin yung saligang batas ay hindi labag sa interes ng taong bayan. Sapagkat pag ginawa niyong labag, tandaan niyo, sasabihin ko, lalabanan ko yan, I will campaign against the ratification of the Constitution. So para sa akin, no, regardless, whether CONCON yan or CONAS, pag yan labag sa interes ng taong bayan, from the point of view of many people, hindi rin makakapasa yan.
Before we reach ratification, before we conduct a plebiscite, necessarily, we'll have to go through the first stage, which is via CONAS or via CONCON. And that's precisely my question. Kasi we're here to make our decision. Kasi kung ang di-decide namin dito as a committee and eventually sa plenary, there's no need to amend, then I might as well move to adjourn. There's no point discussing anymore, but we are discussing here yung assumption that there's a need to amend or revise the Constitution. But before we reach that stage, that this is presented to the people for ratification, kailangan magpili muna kami to make our wise decision kung via CONAS or via CONCON. Yun po yung akin tanong.
Ang nakikita ko lang yung advantage ng CONAS, Constituent Assembly. Mabilis. Tatrabaho kagad kayo. Pero pag CONCON, magbobotohan pa, magagawa pa kayo na muna ng batas. Magkaroon ng CONCON, kakaroon pa ng eleksyon, matagal. Samantalang kayo, nakaupo na kayo uumpisahan nyo kagad. Sa gastos naman sabi nga kanina dito hindi importanteng gastos. Mahalaga magkaroon.
Now, my second question is, and I will address it again to any of the resource persons present, for the information and enlightenment of those watching, kasi kami, nagbasa naman kami ng konti. What is the difference between revision and amendment? I think this is a vital question that our people should understand first, before we go into amending or proposing or revising the Constitution. Maybe I should ask the two Chief Justices. Chief Justice.
The distinction between amendment and revision is clear-cut. Both the qualitative test and the quantitative test. When you say amendment, you are talking of piecemeal amendments. you talk of revision, you're talking of amendments that go to several provisions of the Constitution. That is, and that's why I refer to the quantitative test. You also have the qualitative test. You look at the significance of the amendments, the changes that will be proposed. If the changes are very important, they go to the essence of the policies and the other important parts of the Constitution, then you need a revision.
Is altering the principle of separation of powers, for example, need revision or amendment?
That will need revision, Your Honor, because you will be rebalancing the powers of government, rebalancing the powers of the legislature vis-a-vis the executive, the powers of the executive vis-a-vis the legislature and the judiciary, the powers of the judiciary vis-a-vis the two other branches of government.
Thank you, sir. Before Mr. Chairman, before I recognize Chief Justice Davide, si Professor Lavinia would like to say something about the first question that I posited earlier.
Yes,
Thank you.
please proceed, Dean Tony.
Thank you, Chair. I actually speak from my point of view as a constitutional law professor as well as a legal history professor. I followed after my master, Justice Vivi Mendoza, who taught me my basic constitutional law, that to change the Constitution and to do it right, you must actually follow the right procedure that is acceptable to the people and that makes the people participate as extensively as possible. And in that sense, a constitutional convention is always superior over other forms. But I agree with Chief Justice Puno that you can have a hybrid of fewer elected representatives with a few appointed ones to do it right. We have to remember that every time we tried to change the Constitution and we didn't follow proper procedure, in the case of the 1971 Constitutional Convention, it was actually a good convention. Senator Nenny Pimentel is there, but and several others here were there, but it was hijacked at the end by martial law. The Parity Rights Amendment was a Constituent Assembly. That's our example, actually, of a Constituent Assembly decision. But it was also hijacked by denying the seats to the Democratic Alliance representatives. And so every time we do that, the next few years we're confused, we're fighting. There's always attempt, again, to reject that Constitution, and we shouldn't do that for this particular case. My main concern, and I agree with the positions by everyone that it has to be separate voting. I'd actually want to answer your last question, Chair, which is that can Congress, the two houses in a resolution, joint resolution, limit the power of the Constituent Assembly? I think CJ Puno is correct. You cannot really do that. The moment you convene a Constituent Assembly, that's a separate body. And so that body can make decisions, and you might even have an agreement, a written agreement with the Senate, with the House that it's voting jointly. But if they decide to change that agreement, they can decide to send this to the COMELEC, whatever is approved. I would suspect the COMELEC would have the option, well, let the people decide. And I would suspect the Supreme Court will also have that option. I'm not saying the Supreme Court will say that, but they would have that option, that the argument that is anyway up to the people to decide, it's up to the people. So it's very worrisome for me, for the Senate to even agree. One way of doing this might be the approach of Justice Escuna, that you might actually try a few amendments and test it. For sure, it will go to the Supreme Court anyway, and so we will have a clear precedent that the Supreme Court says it's joint voting, it's separate voting that's required. That's one way of doing that. We can be more deliberate in following this, but I worry very greatly that if you convene into a Constituent Assembly and the Senate agrees to do that regardless of your agreement with the House on it, that in fact that can be reversed, and whatever is approved by 3/4 of the members of the Constituent Assembly can in fact be sent to the COMELEC for plebiscite.